So today we got the official 11.6 rebalance notes for King Galkobar and Aratea Corpse Flower, and I have to say, honestly, these buffs look pretty promising. Aratea might finally become a legitimate arena threat, while Galkobar got turned into one of the strongest poison champions in the game. So let's break down what actually changed and if these champions are finally worth building. So with King Galkobar, they tried to improve the already existing kit and not change the base of it, right? They just wanted to improve it, and I think they really did, okay? So the A1 now places a shield buff for 2 turns on this champion and the ally with the lowest HP. Before that, it was only on the ally with the lowest HP, okay? And the shield value was equal to 15% of the ally's max HP. Now it's 15% of this champion's max HP, which is a huge change. Suddenly, you can actually get a big shield on one of your squishier nukers, right? So that is actually a good thing. Also, he's placing it on himself, right? So you have basically 2 shields with 1 A1. Pretty nice. Now the A2 attacks all enemies, has an 80% chance of removing all buffs. This can be booked up to 100%. And places 2 poison debuffs now for 2 turns on each enemy. Places an additional 5% poison debuff for 2 turns on each enemy for each buff removed from them. Stacks up to 3 additional poison debuffs, so you can place up to 5 poison debuffs with this skill. And also has a 100% chance, if booked, of placing a block boss debuff on all enemies for 2 turns. These effects cannot be resisted if this champion is under shield buff. Very, very interesting. This means if you are able to sustain the shield, you don't really need accuracy here, okay? Before that, it was just a buff strip and 1 poison for each buff that was removed. But now they kept the amount of poisons he can place, but also he's placing 2 initially, right? So it's definitely a better skill now. On the A3, he removes all debuffs from all allies and places 2 continuous heal buffs for 1 turn on them, okay? So a full cleanse with continuous heal. Actually pretty nice. This is a strong support, okay? He can remove buffs, he can cleanse debuffs, heal, poisons, shield. So far, so good, okay? Before that, the continuous heals were conditional depending on how many debuffs were removed with this skill, okay? Now you don't need any debuffs. You just, place the continuous heals anyway. Everything else stays the same on this skill, and then this passive change is actually insane. Whenever an enemy under a poison debuff attacks an ally, instantly activates all poison debuffs on that enemy, occurs once per turn, also instantly activates continuous heal buff, 1 continuous heal buff on the attacked ally, and this is actually insane. Before it was just 1 poison that would get activated, now you actually activate all poisons, okay? So if you pair him with another poisoner, you will activate the poisons the whole time. This is actually pretty good, okay? Now, will he be super meta for end game players? Probably not. I don't really see it. But in general, I think this is a good buff and definitely increases the value of King Galkobar. His kit definitely looks improved, and he doesn't seem lackluster now, okay? He's placing poisons, removing buffs. He can cleanse. He can activate poisons, so yeah, pretty interesting kid. I was wondering if you could make him work for Chimera for the poison activation. I guess there he could work there, right? You could activate the poisons, but I think before the Viper takes a turn, or when the Viper takes a turn, it will transfer all the poisons, okay? So the poisons probably won't get activated. That has to be tested. I don't know how that works, but I think that's how it's going to play out, okay? You probably won't be able to activate those poisons. So in general, I think this is for like PvE progression type of stuff, and maybe in Siege, not quite sure how that would play out with Nell maybe, but yeah, I can see him mostly being used in PvE waves, okay? Now with Aratea, they actually try to make her arena viable, okay? So let's take a look. Aratea Corpse Flower is a Void Legendary champion, okay? But she's attack-based, which is a little bit of a downside. You don't really want to run that many squishy champions, right? But let's see, okay? So her A1 attacks 1 enemy and fills this champion's turn meter by 10%, and so on. Will counterattack using the skill when hit by enemies under a hex debuff. That's everything is the same. And now what got changed is that this skill also deals 50% more damage when counterattacking. That is a lot of damage, okay? That is a lot of damage. 50% more is a lot of damage, and they also increase the damage multiplier. I'm wondering how much damage she does already, okay? That's what it comes down to when you talk about arena nukers, all right? Unless they have some crazy utility. But so let's keep on reading, okay? She has an A2 with a double hit, with an AoE double hit, which is quite intriguing, and the damage increases by 15% now instead of 10% for each enemy under a hex debuff, okay? So she's all about hex, all right? Not all about hex, but hex is what enables her, okay? Which is quite interesting because we don't really have that many hex champions in the game, okay? Will ignore shield, block damage, this is new, that she ignores block damage with this AoE hit, and strengthen. Quite good, okay? Ignoring free things, which are quite often to be seen in arena, shield, block damage, and strengthen, that is good. On a double hit, amazing. Fills this champion's turn meter by 30%, fills this champion's turn meter by an additional 20% for each enemy killed by this skill. Damage multiplier increased as well, okay? So 5% more damage, ignoring block damage as well. Before it was conditional, only if the target has hex. Now it's not conditional anymore. Only the extra damage is conditional. And then the multiplier got increased. So overall, a pretty good buff to this skill, okay? And now the A3. Places a 50% increase accuracy buff on all allies for 2 turns, which is what you want on her, because we can place Death Brand. And for those that don't know what Death Brand is, if you kill a champion that has Death Brand, a Death Brand debuff, he will be block revived, okay? Queen of Hearts has that, and I think Arnie has that too. So has a 100% chance if booked of placing a Death Brand debuff on a target enemy for 2 turns. Also has a 100% chance of placing a Hex debuff on all enemies for 2 turns. And there we go, there we have the Hex. Will ignore block debuffs buffs. This is new. Before it didn't ignore the block debuffs. Places a protected block damage buff on this champion for 2 turns. And then grants an extra turn, okay? So when you take a turn with her, you buff up that protected block damage, so you have some survivability. You have increased accuracy, so you don't have to go super crazy with your accuracy, right? Because you have the buff. You can block revive. You can also place the hex, which enables the other skills. And then you use the A2, okay? You get an extra turn, then you use the A2. Then you have a double hit. If you are placing the hex, you're dealing 15% more damage, but you're also ignoring shield, block damage, and strengthen. And then you feel the turn meter of her. So, quite interesting. I don't know if that's enough for the total guard meta, for the Mercurial meta, but an AoE double hit is pretty strong, I have to say. If you run somebody else that can get rid of the total guard stacks before her, I can definitely see her, you know, being viable and useful, okay? But at the end of the day, it comes down to how hard can she hit, like always with nukers, right? Alright, so the passive, this is new. Whenever this champion kills an enemy in a battle, will ignore 10% of all other targets' defenses, stacks up to 30%. So she kind of has a Slayer set bonus here that she can stack up, okay? Up to 30% defense. This is pretty interesting. If you're facing champions like Krutraxa that are coming back multiple times, or, I don't know, a Wukong, or, you know, or champions are getting revived by Nice or whatever, and you can, you know, you can get some serious death ignore going here. But obviously you also need to survive with her. Whenever this champion kills 2 or more enemies in a battle, this champion will receive a shield buff for 2 turns, and this is now new, at the end of their own turn, okay? Before it was at the start of their own turn and equal to 40% of their max HP. Now the value of the shield is proportional to this champion's attack, and that makes much more sense because you're not trying to stack HP on her. This has way better synergy because you're trying to stack attack anyway, right? She's attack based, so that makes a lot more sense. We saw a similar passive like this on Solinar, which places a magma shield, even better, right? But she places a normal shield, okay? But you know, that gives her a lot more survivability, but you have to kill 2 or more enemies in a battle, okay? You have to kill, otherwise you are not enabling this passive. Now, whenever this champion kills 3 or more enemies in a battle, places a block revive debuff on any subsequent enemies killed by this champion. So any skill, you don't need Death Brand anymore, you will just go and block revive everybody, okay, if you kill them. To me, this seems like a legit buff, okay? It seems like a legit buff. Now it comes down to how hard can she hit. And most likely you will need a soul, you will need a good relic, you will need good gear. But I think if you get some kills going, you know, maybe some squishy targets, I can see her being great, okay? I can see her being great. But first you gotta get some kills, that's the thing. Now, is Aratea meta though? She's kind of like hex dependent. She needs a setup, right? She needs somebody that gets rid of buffs and, you know, total guard stacks, and then she needs to kill. The Void Legendary competition is very brutal. We have so many crazy Void Legendary champions, and then Mythicals on top, so it's very hard to compete with them. But this seems like a good buff, okay? She seems much better now. Much better than before. Before she was, you know, just another Vault Guardian. But now I can see actually some value in her kit. And now it comes down to how hard can she hit. But every time I see Hex, I kind of feel like, you know, this is another Hydra champion. And maybe that's the case. I don't know. But, you know, in Hydra you can't really get kills. You're decapitating the heads, so you're not enabling the passive as well. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know about this Hex stuff in PvP, but it might work. Who knows? We have to wait and see what people are doing with her once the rebalance goes live and once we see some proper testing. Then we can say more about this one. But it looks promising on paper, I have to say. Now, I actually think both of these rebalances are a success for us for different reasons. Aratea got turned into a very aggressive arena nuker that can snowball and block revive. Block revive is very, very good. A protected block damage, you can't get rid of it. We've seen that from Nice. And every time a champion can, you know, buff up and then take an extra turn, that's always good, unless you're facing a Solinar. But in general, that's a good skill to have. Galkobar became one of those champions that can maybe solo stuff, you know, a lot of poisons, a lot of heals, a lot of shield, a lot of sustain, you know, good support with poisons. Might be, you know, restricted to like progression stuff, but still, he looks way better than before. Yeah, so I don't think any of these buffs feel lazy. We don't need every champion to be the most OP champion, right, in the entire game. We don't need that. And honestly, I feel like this is the kind of rebalance that Raid needs more often, okay? But yeah, at the end of the day, the real question is, are these champions strong enough that players actually go ahead and book them and build them and invest all their resources? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think about these rebalances? I'm looking forward to see what Corpse Flower can do now. I'm really intrigued. And yeah, with that being said, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you enjoyed, please smash that like button. Also, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you like this video, YouTube's going to think that you like this one as well. Take care and see you in the next one.